Not everyone who stands beside you was placed there by God. Some people look harmless, sound sincere, and appear supportive, yet their presence is quietly destroying your peace, your purpose, and your spiritual clarity. And God is warning you right now. Trust is sacred, and when you give it to the wrong people, it becomes a weapon in their hands and a wound in yours. Number 1. The double-faced. These are the people who act one way in front of you and another way behind your back. They smile, they nod, they compliment, but something in your spirit feels unsettled around them. You leave a conversation and feel strangely drained. You confide in them and feel exposed instead of supported. Why? Because their loyalty depends on the room they're in, not the relationship they claim to have with you. Double-faced people are spiritually dangerous because they carry two voices, one public, one private, one soft, one sharp. They hold your trust like a mask. They put it on when it benefits them and rip it off when it benefits someone else. The Bible warns us about this exact pattern in James 1:8, where it says, "A double-minded person is unstable in all their ways." Not some, all. God is not telling you to hate these people. He's telling you to stop trusting them with the parts of you that are sacred. Stop handing them your truth and expecting loyalty. Stop assuming that consistency in conversation equals consistency in character. You cannot build anything solid with someone whose heart changes depending on the audience. The double-faced person is often subtle. They don't look like a threat. They don't speak like an enemy. But their inconsistency is their confession. Their silence in moments where they should defend you reveals more than their words ever could. Pay attention when God shows you a person's pattern. A broken pattern is still a pattern, and repeating it costs you more than fixing it. Trust is a doorway. And if you let the wrong person walk through it, they don't just step into your life. They step into your peace, your emotions, your decisions, and your spiritual atmosphere. Some of the confusion you're feeling isn't spiritual warfare. It's the fruit of trusting the double-faced. You're not being unloving by stepping back. You're being obedient. Number 2, the emotionally unstable. These are the people whose reactions you can never predict. One day they love you, the next day they distance themselves. One moment they encourage you, the next they tear you down. You walk on eggshells because you don't know who you're going to get. Their validation feels warm, but their withdrawal feels icy. And here is the warning. Emotional instability quickly becomes spiritual instability. Emotionally unstable people make terrible foundations because they shift constantly. They want commitment without consistency, closeness without accountability, and access without responsibility. And if you're not careful, their instability becomes your anxiety. Suddenly you're questioning yourself, questioning your worth, questioning your decisions, questioning whether you offended them, when in reality you're dealing with someone who is battling internal storms they refuse to address. You cannot trust someone whose emotions dictate their character. You cannot anchor your heart in a person who is blown by every wind of mood, conflict, insecurity, or temptation. People like this don't mean to hurt you. Most of the time they don't even realize what they're doing. But that doesn't make the damage any less real. The danger comes from one simple truth. Your level of trust often determines their level of access. And emotionally unstable people should never have deep access to your heart, your home, your vision, or your spirit. Proverbs 25:28 describes a person without self-control as a city without walls, meaning unprotected, open, vulnerable to attack. When you trust someone who has no control over their emotions, you are trusting someone who is spiritually exposed, and their battles will become your battles. God's not telling you to abandon people in turmoil. He's telling you not to confide in people who refuse to manage their turmoil. Love them, pray for them, support them from a distance, but do not allow their emotional roller coaster to define your identity. Protect your stability, protect your clarity, protect your peace. The emotionally unstable person is not evil. They're just not safe to trust deeply. Number 3, the quietly jealous. Jealous people rarely announce themselves. They don't always sabotage you aloud. Sometimes they simply remain silent when God blesses you. They don't clap for you. They don't show up for you. They don't rejoice when you rise. They study you, compare themselves to you, pretend to cheer for you. But their heart is secretly threatened by what God is doing in your life. And jealousy is not a harmless emotion, it's a spiritual poison. A jealous person may never say a word, but their presence carries a tension you can feel. They ask questions that sound supportive, but are rooted in insecurity. They downplay your progress with a smile. They joke about your calling, your ideas, your goals. They react with subtle disappointment when you succeed, and subtle relief when you struggle. Jealousy creates quiet sabotage, not always through actions, but through atmosphere. You can feel the heaviness around them. You can sense the competition they won't admit. And God is warning you, do not trust someone who is silently threatened by your growth. Cain wasn't loud. Saul wasn't loud. The Pharisees weren't loud. But jealousy grew in silence until it became violence. When someone is jealous of you, they will eventually harm you, not always physically, but emotionally, spiritually, relationally. Their envy blinds them. It makes them misread your intentions, misinterpret your words, and resent your blessings. And you cannot trust someone who resents what God has given you. Jealous people don't need confrontation. They need distance. They need healing that you cannot provide. They need identity from God that you cannot give. And trusting them puts you in unnecessary spiritual danger. You love them, you forgive them, but you do not give them the keys to your heart. Jealousy doesn't always show up in big dramatic moments. Sometimes it shows up in the smallest reactions. The delayed congratulations, the forced smile, the uncomfortable silence when you share good news. Pay attention to what your spirit feels, not just what your eyes see. Discernment is not suspicion, it is spiritual protection. When God reveals jealousy, He is not exposing the person to embarrass them. He is exposing the atmosphere, so you don't place your trust where it can be misused. And here is the truth most people avoid. A jealous person cannot love you the way you need. Not because they don't want to, but because envy blinds them to who you really are. They will always compare, always compete, always interpret your success as their loss. And any relationship built on comparison will eventually collapse under the weight of insecurity. God is not asking you to reject the jealous person. He is asking you not to hand them the parts of your life they can't handle. Protect what God is doing in you. Don't let someone else's insecurity become your spiritual responsibility. Now here's the critical part. When God tells you not to trust someone, it's not punishment, it's protection. God sees what you can't see. He hears conversations you weren't invited into. He sees intentions long before actions reveal them. And when He convicts your spirit, when He makes you feel unsettled around someone, when He places a hesitation in your heart, don't ignore it. That is not paranoia. That is discernment. Some of the battles you've been fighting aren't actually spiritual warfare. They're the consequence of trusting someone who was never meant to carry that level of access to you. You gave them your time, your heart, your secrets, your peace, and God is saying, that level of trust was meant for me, not for them. Trust is holy. Access is holy. Your heart is holy. And when you give holy things to untrustworthy people, the damage is deeper than you realize. You start doubting your purpose. You second-guess your calling. You shrink your dreams. You silence your voice. You lower your standards. You minimize your progress so someone else doesn't feel threatened by it. And you begin carrying weights God never asked you to carry. But God is correcting that right now. He is removing the wrong people, exposing hidden motives, and showing you why certain relationships could not continue. Not because you're unloving, but because you're chosen. And chosen people cannot trust everyone. There are 3 types of people God warns you about, not to shame them, but to protect you. The double-faced who confuse your spirit, the emotionally unstable who drain your clarity, the silently jealous who resent your blessing. Each one pulls you away from purpose in a different way. Each one blurs your spiritual vision in a way that feels subtle at first, but destructive over time. Each one affects your peace, your focus, and your walk with God. And here is the revelation. Some of the confusion in your life isn't coming from the enemy. It's coming from the people you trust. When your spirit is unsettled, that is God speaking. When you feel drained after every conversation, that is God protecting you. When someone consistently makes you second-guess yourself, that is God warning you. When their behavior never matches their words, that is God revealing their heart. When you feel smaller around someone God called you to grow away from, that is God redirecting you. You do not need to confront everyone. You do not need to argue. You do not need to explain why you're stepping back. Godly boundaries don't need announcements. They just need obedience. There are people in your life who can stay in your circle, but not in your spirit. They can stay in your environment, but not in your confidence. They can stay in your prayers, but not in your secrets. They can stay in your heart, but not in your inner access. Trust is not about being nice. Trust is about being wise. And wisdom says, love them, bless them, forgive them, but don't hand them what they can't steward. God is elevating you, and elevation always requires separation. Not everyone can go where God is taking you. Not everyone can carry the weight of your calling. Not everyone can celebrate the blessing God is placing on your life. And not everyone deserves the same level of access to your heart. So here is the question God is asking you right now. Who have you trusted that I never told you to trust? Who have you allowed to speak into your life? Who have you allowed to influence your decisions? Who have you allowed to drain you, confuse you, or quietly compete with you? Who have you allowed too close simply because you didn't want to seem harsh or unloving? God is not calling you to be harsh. He is calling you to be obedient. And obedience sometimes looks like stepping back, letting distance speak, letting God reveal hearts, letting silence protect what words would ruin, letting Him reorder your relationships so your spirit can breathe again. If you feel conviction while listening to this, it's not condemnation, it's direction. It's clarity. It's God saying your trust is valuable. Stop giving it to people who mishandle it. Now take a moment and ask God, who do I need to release? Who do I need to guard my heart from? Who have I been trusting without discernment? Because your next blessing, your next level, your next breakthrough will require spiritual clarity, and clarity cannot survive in the presence of people God warned you about. If this spoke to your spirit, comment, "Protect my peace," as a declaration of obedience. Your heart is not up for negotiation. Guard it like the treasure God designed it to be.